You know, when we look at the European Union today, it's this absolute giant on the world stage, right? A huge economic and political force. But if you've ever stopped to think about how it actually happened, how a continent that literally tore itself apart twice in one lifetime managed to build one of the most ambitious peace projects in history? Well, let's get into it.
Okay, let's just take a second and picture this. It's 1945. Europe is just a wreck. I mean, we're talking cities leveled, economies completely shattered, and this dark cloud of the Cold War already starting to form. The continent was quite literally on its knees.
So what do you do? I mean, that's the massive, almost impossible question staring Europe's leaders right in the face. It wasn't just about, rebuilding a few buildings. It was about making sure something like this could never, ever happen again. How on earth do you break a cycle of war that's gone on for centuries? Well, out of all that destruction, a pretty radical dream started to take shape. A few key leaders looked at the chaos and thought, you know what, the old way of doing things, all this division, it's not working. The only way forward is through deep, genuine cooperation.
This is where a few key figures step in. We're talking about people like Robert Schuman and Jean Monnet from France, Konrad Adenauer from Germany, Alcide de Gasperi from Italy. And they had this truly radical idea. They understood that to get real, lasting peace, you couldn't just sign a treaty and call it a day. No, you had to weave the nations of Europe, especially the old enemies, so tightly together that war would become, well, not just unthinkable, but physically impossible.
But a dream is one thing, a plan is another. And their first step wasn't some grand sweeping declaration. It was an incredibly clever, practical idea designed to do exactly that, to make war materially impossible. And the way they did it was surprisingly simple.
And this is where the genius of the Schuman Declaration comes in. Its brilliance was in its simplicity. It went straight for the jugular, the actual raw materials of war. The idea was simple. Let's get France and Germany, who'd been at each other's throats for generations, to pool their coal and steel. Why? Well, think about it. You can't build a single tank or a gun or a warship without coal and steel. By putting those key industries under a shared, supranational authority, and that's a key word. It means a power above any single nation. You're basically taking the tools for war right out of their hands.
So that's exactly what happened. In 1951, the European coal and steel community was born, and it started small, with just 6 countries: France, West Germany, Italy, and the Benelux trio, Belgium, Netherlands, and Luxembourg. This whole massive project didn't happen overnight. It was a small, pragmatic, but incredibly powerful first move.
And you know what? It worked. This first little experiment was a massive success. And it got people thinking, if we can cooperate on coal and steel, why not on, well, everything else? The ambition quickly scaled up from just preventing war to actually building a shared prosperity.
That thinking led straight to the Treaties of Rome in 1957. This is what created the European Economic Community, or the EEC. The goal here was huge but simple. Create one giant common market. Get rid of all the trade barriers and tariffs and let goods, services, capital, and people move around freely. And the payoff was immediate. A long period of amazing economic growth that just proved that working together paid off.
Of course, nothing attracts a crowd like success. Other countries started looking over the fence, seeing all this peace and prosperity, and they wanted in. So through the 70s and 80s, the community grew. And this was a big deal, especially when countries like Greece, Spain, and Portugal joined. They were just coming out of dictatorships, and joining the club was a way to lock in their newfound democracy.
And another really important thing happened around this time. In 1979, they held the first direct elections for the European Parliament. This was a crucial step. It meant that for the first time, this wasn't just a project for governments and diplomats. Regular citizens could now have a direct voice in how Europe was run, adding a whole new layer of democracy to the mix.
As we get closer to the end of the 20th century, the ambition takes another giant leap. The goalposts moved again. It wasn't just about a common market anymore. The new goal was a genuine political union.
Okay, fast forward to 1992 and we get the Maastricht Treaty. This was the game changer. This is the moment the EEC, the European Economic Community, officially becomes the European Union that we talk about today. And listen, this wasn't just slapping a new label on the box. It was a massive, fundamental shift. It went way beyond just economics. Now they were officially cooperating on big stuff like foreign policy, security, and justice. This treaty even set the stage for a single currency.
Which brings us right to the euro. When it launched in 1999, it was way more than just a convenient way to travel and trade.
It was designed to be a powerful, physical symbol of a shared European identity, something you could literally hold in your hand.
As it stands today, 20 out of the 27 EU countries use the euro. For hundreds of millions of people, it's become maybe the most visible, everyday symbol of this whole project, a constant little reminder that they're part of something bigger.
But let's be real, the road hasn't always been smooth. The 21st century has thrown some massive challenges at the Union, crises that have really tested its strength and its ability to stick together.
It really felt like one thing after another. The EU got hammered by crisis after crisis, each one testing it in a different way. You had the massive economic shock of the 2008 financial crisis, then a social and political stress test with the migration crisis, a full-blown identity crisis with Brexit, and of course a global health emergency with the pandemic. Each one of these events put the Union under unbelievable strain.
But here's the thing about pressure. Sometimes it creates diamonds. Out of all these challenges, especially the pandemic, came some pretty incredible innovation. Take the Next Generation EU plan. This was huge. For the very first time, the EU as a whole decided to issue common debt to finance recovery. That might sound a bit technical, but what it really means is that richer and poorer countries were all borrowing together as one team. It was a massive step towards real solidarity.
So where does that leave us? What exactly is the European Union today? Well, it's definitely not just about economics anymore. It's this totally unique political creature that's always in the process of defining itself and figuring out its place in the world.
And at its heart, what really holds it all together is a set of shared values. We're talking about a commitment to democracy, the rule of law, human rights, and solidarity. And these aren't just nice ideas on a poster. They are the absolute price of admission. They're the political foundation for the entire project.
And that, right there, really gets to the truth of what the EU is. It's not a finished product. It's not some final destination you arrive at. It's a constant work in progress, a process of arguing and compromising and adapting that requires nonstop effort from everyone involved.
So when you step back and look at the whole picture, from the absolute devastation of war to a union of 27 nations, it's clear the EU is one of the most ambitious, most unique political experiments in all of human history. Now it's facing a whole new set of global challenges, and the big question is still there. What's the next chapter going to be?